to a brand new edition of Off the Cuff on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, the show that every time I tell my wife that I'm hosting it, she asks, is this the one that's going to make us millionaires? And I don't know how to respond to that. Anyways, my name is Mike Heck. Thank you for joining us. If you're new to the show, this is like barbershop type talk, and we mix things up. We look at the sport and the news inside the world of mixed martial arts and the media space a little bit differently. Of course, I do not do this alone. What would be the point in that? So joining me on this venture first from multiple shows on this network, as well as his own network, Mr. Craig Allen. Good evening, sir.
Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. You were a little bit fired up before we hit record here. Are you feeling all right?
I feel good. Listen, I did my early 2-minute predictions for UFC 247, like way ahead of the event, because I'm going to be away all of next week. I have a replacement for Between the Links, for Off the Cuff. Early stoppage might be a one-man show if you kind of catch my drift as to who my replacement is. But listen, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going on a honeymoon. I haven't been on a vacation in a long time, and I kind of need one right now.
So we have a replacement for Between the Links. Are you breaking some news right now?
I am. The replacement's going to be a guy who finished in the same place as I did this past week.
Ah, John Franklin. Great. No?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay. I was like, you seemed unsure, but all right.
Sorry to be so cryptic.
We got Mr. Loudmouth himself, Kyle Steele. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. This is the most red I've ever seen Craig, man. He's real jacked up today.
He's got the Keith Schillen pink face right now.
He absolutely does. The clip of you guys telling Craig that he looks like a Browns assistant coach is pretty legit.
That whole episode.
It was special teams. You demoted him even further. Assistant coach. Brutal.
That whole episode of Between the Links is absolutely ridiculous. So whether you listen to it, you should probably watch it because it's even better. While you're watching it, you can see my name is Kyle Steele without the E throughout that entire episode.
Yeah. So not only is it not your name, but it's my name but misspelled.
It's not even your name. It's somebody else's. It's a poor name of some kind out there. Let's introduce a man who did an outstanding job with his coverage of Bellator 238 for the Scrap. We have Drake Riggs back on the show. How are you, Drake?
Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, doing good, man. It was a really fun week, really cool experience. Got to go to Paramount Studios, which was really cool for the second media day, second of two. Yeah, it was a great week. Happy to be home, though. Once you get to that end of the media day, you're like, end of the fight week, you're like, okay, I'm ready to go home. Just the perfect amount of time, just the perfect length.
Drake, before we get rolling, how key is pronunciation on a scale of 1 to 10?
It is very important, Mike. I might even go off the chart and say 11. You got to be really, really precise with your pronunciation.
That video is awesome. So go check out Drake's Twitter account and check that out. It's great. So let's get into this thing because I think most people are still sort of talking about the Bellator versus the UFC kind of thing on Saturday, like who won the battle of the weekend, the Saturday night showdown, if you will. And I think the consensus, at least from what I've seen and what I've heard, that it's probably Bellator, right? So let's take like more of a gander at the puzzle pieces that put these cards together. Let's talk like the overall MVP of the weekend in MMA. And what I mean by that is whose stock rose the most over the weekend? Like who came into the weekend in one place, but has immediately jumped up like a bunch of levels after Saturday night or even before that, more than anyone else. Craig, what do you think? Who's sort of the MVP of the weekend? Whose stock rose the most?
I mean, I'm kind of beating the drum here, but the way that I did this and I looked at these two cards was A, storylines, B, are there potential title ramifications in any of these fights, and C, are there any top prospects that could really, really break through and just super, rocket into superstardom. Maybe not so much on the prospects. Maybe there were some good storylines. Of course, both main events were quite good. But really, for me, it was title implications. It was Anthony Pettis against Alfred Kachakian. And, I mean, Drake, he's a pronunciation expert. So
yes,
I'll let
Sergio.
him...
It was Sergio.
Oh, it was Sergio. So, Sergio. Yeah. Oh,
got you, buddy. I got you.
Good start. All fired up. But still, Sergio Pettis. It's all about Sergio Pettis. I mean, Anthony, we really don't know where his place is right now in the UFC. But for Sergio, he's right in that title mix at 135 in Bellator. And it's due to the fact that your champ, Horiguchi, vacated the belt. Caldwell's up at 45, fighting Adam Boric. All of a sudden, Patchy Mix looks great. Sergio Pettis looks great. Is that a match made in heaven? Who knows? But I think that's a likely title fight coming up here soon.
I think it was huge for Aaron Pico to get back on track. I mean, he's obviously the guy that has the most to gain. I think I'm not ready to give up on him yet. I don't think most people are. So getting back on track is an important step. Yeah, he fought a nobody essentially, but still, to get back on track is good. I want to focus on the UFC because I think Bellator is probably where Drake is going to go as well. I think for the UFC, I'm going to go Michael Chiesa. He looked absolutely massive against RDA. It's the biggest he's looked. And it's like, oh, maybe there's a chance here. Maybe the Kevin Lee fight was real weird, and that was a 55 anyway, right? So that was a 55, right? Yeah. Because Kevin Lee also went up for a minute. I didn't remember if they fought there, but yeah, that was a 155 anyway. So he's at 170 now. He looks huge. I don't know. We'll see what happens here. I don't know if his stock super rose. He just looked really big, and it's like, okay, like this is his division. Clearly, I don't think he's going back down to 55 at this point. And it's hard to say someone like Cyborg stock rose anymore. And with the main event, I think we know what Curtis Blades is. I can't imagine his stock rose too much more either.
Well, Kyle, I will tell you, I actually was going with Chiesa. I think it's hands down Chiesa here, all right? Because, okay, look, it goes up to welterweight. He beats Carlos Condit and Diego Sanchez. That doesn't tell us a whole lot, really. These guys kind of on the back end of their career, specifically Condit. Diego still has some, magic juices flowing through him, whatever, bring him the fountain of youth he seems to have found. No use out of stuff. But, I think it was Chiesa because he wasn't ranked before this fight, I don't think. And then he goes and beats RDA, who was like top 5-ish, at least, top 6, 7. Catapults himself right in there, sets himself up now for, one of those top 10 fights, no matter what. Again, he says he's only looking up, which, can't blame him there. Looked very good, won the fight pretty easily, I think. And he was very large for sure. Fits right into welterweight. Crazy to think that he was at lightweight at all. I think for sure, he was the one who had the biggest stock rise. And then as for Bellator, though, I might say AJ Agazarm, honestly, just because, he goes out there, puts on arguably the fight of the night, which I don't know if that helps his stock raise, but, he was kind of in that. It was kind of somewhat of a bust. I think his first 3 fights were a little bit, isn't really living up to the hype yet. But then he goes and has somewhat of a war, shows that he can, he was having some trouble in striking, but he was able to hang enough to hurt his opponent. And then, ends up finishing it on the ground where we know that he can do so with his own patented Agazarm submission. He very, very wants you to know that that's a thing. So I think that might be my pick for Bellator. But yeah, I think overall it's got to be Chiesa, hands down.
Yeah, Chiesa's a great pick. It's definitely something I was looking at. But I think for me, honestly, I'm going with Darren Caldwell because, this is a guy who hit a skid. He lost back-to-back fights to Horiguchi, and then he had a decision win over Henry Corrales in the first round of the Grand Prix in a fight that just wasn't all that exciting. And people were just like, Caldwell's just going to take him down for 2 rounds, then he's going to run away in the third, and he'll move on to the next round of the tournament. But he goes out there against a surging guy like Adam Boric and puts him away before the halfway point of the opening round. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I think, most people may have thought Caldwell was going to win that fight, maybe a decision, but I don't think anyone really thought he was going to go out there and do what he did. So to me, Caldwell went from a guy who, he might be able to win a couple of fights in this thing to a guy who could give AJ McKee some fits when they meet in the next round of this Grand Prix. I can't wait for that fight. That fight is going to be absolutely ridiculous, dude. Oh, man. Before we move on, does anyone think the UFC had a better overall weekend, or is it Bellator unanimous here?
I don't think I can comment on that.
I would say the UFC had a better weekend in just can you think of a single person that just watched Bellator? But there are a lot of people that just watched the UFC, and then there's people that watched both. But I don't think there's anybody that just watched Bellator. So, I would say the UFC had a better weekend just in that sense.
If Teep to the Junk's listening, then yeah, just watch Bellator. But apart from that, there's probably not a lot of people that just watch Bellator. Unless you're Scott Coker. What I did was had the 2 TVs. There was a little bit where they were meshing together, and maybe we weren't paying attention to Bellator as much as we were paying attention to Curtis Blades and Junior Dos Santos. But after that, you had all the heavy hitters from Bellator plus the cherry on top of the cake was Cyborg and Bud. So,
Yes.
and even the fight, Mike, that you brought up, the Featherweight Grand Prix. So, yeah, Bellator definitely won it for me. But I could see from an overall perspective of how the UFC, it's a better brand, it's a better package, maybe. But Bellator really blew it out of the water. And Drake Riggs did such a good job.
Oh, jeez.
Look at this, buttering him up.
So kind.
This is
When
great.
when did the main event end for UFC?
It was like, wasn't that late?
It was pretty early. It's like 10:30.
So like everybody could flip over and see the main event. That's what I'm getting
Much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
at. Yeah, nice.
That's the beauty of those ESPN Plus cards, like we talked about last week. They just fly. There's no bullshit. There's like, they might go to like commercial a little bit, but it's just like a quick 30-second clip, and then we're right back at it. It's bang, bang, bang. So yeah, I mean, I think the big winner was all of us, the MMA fans, who got to watch what we wanted to watch on both of those cards. But I want to talk about this because we talked about this for a long time last night in Between the Links. I have to bring it up again because although we had a UFC event and we had a Bellator event, Stephen A. Smith stole the weekend. He may be the MVP overall when it comes to MMA and stuff, because the man essentially took over the MMA Twitter world all day on Saturday. He had everyone waiting. Everyone wanted to hear what he had to say, his response, and then he puts it out in the middle of both cards, and it's got over 2 million views since Saturday night. So, Kyle, let's start with you, man. Stephen A., I know you and Frederick Kirby discussed him on your show, the Not Safe for Work podcast. From a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate Stephen A.'s response and the impact that it made?
Boy, I'm going to say like an 8 or a 9. I thought he really turned a lot of people who really would not have supported him otherwise. I think watched that video and went like, he's kind of right. Again, the issue with Stephen A. Smith, not the issue, but his whole existence is predicated upon creating chaos and creating contrast. That's what he's done his entire career. That is literally what he's doing, and he's doing it, I think, kind of perfectly. MMA fans are real stupid, so it's not hard to play into that. But he's also, part of that is he's very dramatic, right? He goes just a little too far, a little too much hyperbole, right? And that's all that's happening here. If the things that people are cherry picking that he said to be mad about, ignoring everything else he said that was right, but the things that they're cherry picking that he shouldn't have said or he went too far with, you can literally look at those things and go, okay, he was being hyperbolic or he was being dramatic, But anyway, his video though, it was a really, really good and thoughtful response, and I think it turned a lot of people who would not have supported him otherwise.
Well, to be honest, I've only listened to this once, and I listened to it in one ear with my other ear listening to Ant Walker, talking some good old Ant banter. So I don't know exactly what he said, but if it did that many views and, he's just got a big following as is, I think that's good for the sport because he's talking about MMA and getting people, interested in what they're talking about and conversing over. So, I'll put that at, a 7, even though I don't know exactly what he said, but if he's getting that much attention, that's a positive.
I'll go with the 7.5 because he knows how to push those buttons. Like Kyle said, the MMA fans, they get bigger buttons than anybody else, and he's pushing them real good. And we may not like it, but it's not about likes and dislikes. It's about numbers. It's about attention. And Stephen A. got the attention of every single MMA fan on Saturday night. In good times or in bad, he got your attention, and you're still talking about him. We're still talking about him. So impact made. Craig, what's your rating?
You know what? I'm going to go off script. I'm going to go really, really high. I'm going to go with a 9 or 10. You talk about all these, he's calculated. It's such a great move. Let's look at it this way. In terms of, old school meets new school. New school being Joe Rogan. Yeah, his podcast has been around for a long time, but he's the biggest podcast in the world. He's talking about Stephen A. Stephen A. is the biggest guy on ESPN, which is the worldwide leader in sports. You put those two together, home run. It's got to be a 10. If that many people watch that video on Twitter, I mean, I get excited if more than 200 people watch a video that I put out on Twitter. So if they can get that many views on Twitter, then that's a pretty darn big deal. And yeah, it might make them look bad. It might make them look good. But either way, maybe 2 million people. I know, Drake only watched it once and Kyle might have watched it 50,000 times, but still, it means something.
His delivery in that video is phenomenal. Like I just watch it for the delivery, the excuse me, and then it like he gets really loud and he's like, you're entitled to it. You're entitled to your opinion. And then he gets all fired up again. It's so great. To close things out in this opening segment, we discussed this a little bit. We were doing superlatives last week, and we talked about like the unsung hero and the unsung hero of UFC 246, which, you know I said Roxanne Modafferi. I know that Drake also said that. Kyle threw out Sadiq Youssef. I forget who Craig's was, as a matter of fact. Do you remember who it was, Craig?
Was it Drew Dober? I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been Drew Dober, but let's do it again this week. Drake, who's the unsung hero? Who's the Roxanne Modafferi, if you will, from this past weekend's action?
Well, I guess I'm going to follow a similar theme to the Roxy pick there with an upset. So, let's give some love to Emily King here, who defeated Ava Knight. She was the underdog. She beat the boxer. Emily King didn't even get to be a part of Media Day, all right? It was one of those things where it's like, okay, she's going out here to be the sacrificial lamb. And, she's fighting alongside her husband, her husband got beat up pretty badly by Raymond Daniels right after she fought. But, she got the win impressively, got a submission rear naked choke over the boxer. That's what you need to do against the boxer. Took her down and choked her. I don't know what the odds were for that fight, but, Emily King, big underdog. She got some shine after that with the post-fight scrum. Got to know her a little bit better. Seems like a really sweet person. Followed the Heather Hardy, Taylor Turner route. Taylor Turner was her teammate, so makes sense. That's a good person to have in your corner for a very similar situation. So, I think that's probably the easy pick, so I'll stick with that one.
Even though Craig said that nobody, and I mean nobody, will remember this on his live stream today, I'm going with Montel Jackson because the performance was great, but the walkout was incredible. It was the best walkout of the weekend, and it's not even close. And there's actually a really great story behind that walkout, which you can check out on my YouTube page. I spoke with Montel this afternoon, but Montel, that guy is going to be a problem for a long time at 135. He's just getting started, and he fought a really tough, gritty guy that just would not go away, and I think he learned a lot from that fight. He's going to get better from it, but the walkout stole the show, in my opinion. Craig, who's your Unsung Hero Award winner?
Might be surprised on this one. I kind of ragged on the fight being maybe on the main card, but I understood why, because one of the fighters was from close by. You can make the Raleigh connection. Not a lot of fighters from North Carolina. Man, Angela Hill beating Hannah Cifers. I don't want to say this, but Hannah Cifers in the UFC, what's the deal? I mean, she beats predictable fighters, but she doesn't beat, decent fighters, gatekeepers. Yeah, Macy Barber is great. And you can disagree with me there, but she's a very good fighter. At 115, all right, she loses that. But you lose to Angela Hill, who you win some, you lose some. I used to say that about Anthony Hamilton, but I'll say it about Angela Hill. But she had such a dominant win. I mean, how can you not consider her as somebody like that was a fight that a lot of people slept on, and she almost overperformed. So now there's a lot of people out there, myself included. What's next for Angela Hill? Do you bump her up against somebody that's way up in the top 10, or do you just kind of let it fester and see what happens? But I'm really interested either way. And again, too, for Hannah Cifers, what's next there? Do you give her a local talent like you did here? What do you do? So a lot of question marks and a great performance by Angela Hill.
Listen, I'm really bummed out that I'm not saying Chris Avila right now, because that didn't work out for him. I'm a big Chris Avila mark, just didn't work out for him. No, I think can I pick a loser? Can
Sure.
I pick a loser?
Pick whoever you want, Kyle.
I'm gonna go with Tony Gravely. Came in, got a chance to put on Fight of the Night, walked away with $50K. I think showed he belongs in the UFC. Obviously, in the Contender Series, he did very well. I'm a big fan of CES. He was obviously fantastic there. I'm going to go Tony Gravely just because he lost, so nobody's really talking about it. But he lost against a monster in Brett Johns, hung in there, and again, had a very, very good fight. Or fun fight, I should say. Yeah, so I'm going to go Tony Gravely. Kudos to him for putting on that kind of a fight.
I gotta tell you, Kyle, I am liking your picks tonight so far.
That's what's up.
You're almost swaying me in different directions. I'm like a pendulum right now. But
so you love Chris Avila too?
Avila?
It's Avila, right? I say Avila. You know what I mean.
Although I thought he won that fight, by the way. I thought he won.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, but sure.
Right, I thought he won. But anyways,
Still below 500.
Yes, but we're gonna be. obviously UFC 247's coming up next weekend. We're going to talk a lot more about that on the show next week. But I want to take a look, because I was looking at him earlier and I was like, what would be a good place to talk about this show. So I wanted to take a look at some of the current betting lines on these cards, because as we've seen as of late, we talked about this with the Roxanne Modafferi Macy Barber fight. Some of these odds and some of these lines have been a bit off from the odds makers and the bookmakers. So I want to take a gander at some of these lines, and we're going to play a little game of not right or just right. So I'm going to give you the odds. You tell me if you think they're going to be, if they're priced appropriately, and your reasons why. So Craig, we're going to start with you here. This is a courtesy of 5 Dimes. We'll just start right at the main event, Craig. John Jones, minus 440, defends the light heavyweight title against Dominic Reyes. Comeback on the challenger is plus 350. Is this just right or not right?
It's not right, Mike. It's not right. I mean, listen, John Jones fought better fighters lately, and Dominic Reyes is undefeated as a pro, as an amateur fighter, and 12 of 17 wins are by first-round finish. That doesn't mean a damn thing when you're fighting John Jones. And you barely beat Volkan Oezdemir in a split decision, and then you knocked out Chris Weidman? Not to sound like Stephen A. Smith, but Chris Weidman, who got finished in 5 of his last 6 fights. Chris Weidman. The title shot was already there. They needed a warm body. Should be minus 1,200.
Kyle, what do you think?
Boy, I can't say I uber agree with Craig here. It's too low, but I think it's pretty perfect for getting people to bet on Dominic Reyes, which ultimately is what the odds makers want. But when you see the lines, it's not that this person is this much more likely to win. It's how can we get people to bet both sides, so that way it doesn't really matter who wins, we can still walk away and make money. So I think the line is good for that. I think you're going to get a lot of people that are willing to bet Dominic Reyes because of that. But I will say, it does feel low. I mean, that does feel we probably should be in the 6s, I think, at the very least here.
I don't know. I feel like it's probably just right, because I'm thinking, John's last 2 performances, the Santos won a little bit, Suspect had a close fight with a guy who had 1 leg, and then Anthony Smith clearly won that one, but, kind of a weird one too. Didn't finish him. Could have finished him probably. And as for Reyes, I feel like if this fight was happening like right after he beat OSP, I'm trying to think if that was right before the Oezdemir fight. If it happened like right after that, the odds might be a little bit closer, just because that was a pretty good performance by him, and he got the. Well, that was a near finish. That wasn't technically a knockout, was it? But could have been. And then he goes and has a questionable win over Oezdemir, and then beats Weidman, who's really that doesn't mean a whole lot. No offense to Weidman or anything, but it just doesn't. It was his first fight at light heavyweight and everything. But he still has finishing ability. He's undefeated still. Jones coming off the questionable win. I think that this is just about right. I mean, if it was to go either way, I would probably. I don't know. I think it's pretty perfect, yeah.
I'm actually with you, Drake. I think this is just right. I actually feel like it's going to get lined a little closer come fight week. I think there's going to see some action on Dominic Reyes close to that fight. But, I think Dominic has a chance, and I think he has as good a chance as anybody else that's fought John over these last fights. And maybe John seems a little vulnerable right now after the Thiago Santos fight. But, from all indications and things that I've seen and people I've talked to, John's going to be on another level on February 8th. But we'll see. It all depends on what man walks into that cage and who gets in there and fights when that door locks behind. So, Kyle, co-main event, we got Valentina Shevchenko defending her women's flyweight title against Caitlin Chukagian. Right now, Shevchenko, Kyle, do you want to take a guess on how much of a favorite Shevchenko is right now?
She's got to be 1,000.
Minus 1135.
Yeah.
Wow.
Chukagian is a plus 725. Obviously a massive difference here. Is this lined right?
Yes. Yes. Then now, if we talk about how see in the John Jones Dominic Reyes fight, there is a legitimate chance that Dominic Reyes could go out there and land a shot that puts John Jones down. Or I don't think that that's what's going to happen, but there is a decent enough chance that happens. There is a less than 1% chance Caitlin Chukagian does anything. She's not going to be able to land something that's going to knock her out, because that's not what happens in that division, and that's not what happens in her fights. She's not going to catch her in a submission. So how on earth does she possibly win? Dominic Reyes at least has a puncher's chance. Chookagian doesn't. So that fight, you got to line it up to where Shevchenko's going to be on a bunch of parlays because it's just such a locked-in fight, and you can throw 3 fights together, throw that on as the third, just juice you up a little bit. So they got to make that one real high so they don't lose money.
Absolutely awful, Mike. All right. I think that this is okay. Well, here's the thing. So it's weird because I think that Chookagian, I think that she stylistically has one of the better chances to beat Shevchenko. I don't know if she can beat her, but stylistically, I think that it's a pretty good matchup. So right there, I think you got to close that gap. But then at the same time, it's like, yeah, who's most likely to finish? That's probably Shevchenko. So it's like, can Chookagian really like outpoint her or anything like that? Her best chance might actually be on the ground. It's kind of that sleeper area. She says she really likes to take things to the ground. And we've seen when she, is in a situation where she needs to finish, like in the Liz Carmouche fight. I don't know if you remember that one. Go back to that at 135. She lost the first 2 rounds clearly. And then she came back and, head kicked Carmouche and almost finished her and was able to, win back that round, I think, or at least, almost get the finish. Maybe Carmouche laid on top of her after recovering a bit. But, she showed some killer instinct there. And, she's been really wanting this one. Not that should affect the odds or anything, but I don't know. I just think stylistically this fight should be a lot closer in the odds. But at the same time, it's like if you're looking at who's guaranteed to win, I guess then you got to go for Shevchenko. But that's just absolutely ridiculous, I think. I mean, that's worse than Modafferi and Barber, right? So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't agree with that at all.
As Craig's put it in our little group chat here, some sites have Shevchenko as a minus 1,400 up at that range, which I think is a little high. I think it's close to being lined right, and the reason I say that is because Valentina is just the gap between her and the rest of the division is just there, and I think all of her fights should be lined like that until she loses or she's tested or at least like is in a close fight. But I just think the gap in the division is that wide. Kaylin, listen, anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's a crazy, wild sport. When 2 people are in a cage and they're locked up and they're throwing fists and all sorts of chaos happens, something nuts could happen. We've seen it many times before, but I just don't see it happening here. I think the line isn't quite right, but I don't think it's that far off either. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, I dedicated 5 minutes to breaking down this fight tonight, and I will tell you this much. Out of 737 picks on Tapology, 98% of fans are going with Valentina Shevchenko, and of them, 52% picking decision. Average line is minus 1,100, plus 675 on Chookagian. Her striking percentages are lower. Typically, better strikers have a better shot against Shevchenko. She does something weird where she usually fights to the level of her competition, and she'll fight their fight as opposed to fighting her own. And in a fight against Chookagian, I see absolutely zero way that she wins. I mean, she's 20-2 as a pro and as an amateur, and her 2 losses are by split, like Drake said. Average fight time in UFC is 15 minutes versus Shevchenko's 17 overall because of all the title fights. I see this as being a boring decision and Shevchenko running away with it. So I agree with the line for sure.
All right, we're going to do 2 more. Drake, Juan Adams is a minus 230 favorite taking on Justin Taffa, whose comeback is plus 190. Is this line right or is this off?
Yeah, I think that's just fine. Juan Adams, he hasn't fought since the Greg Hardy loss, has he?
He has not fought since the Greg Hardy loss.
He has not. So, yeah, looking to rebound here, Taffa. I just think we've seen, a good amount more from Juan. So that feels totally fair. I don't have too much to say. These are heavyweights. Of course, you can't ever really spread it too much on heavyweight because anybody can get knocked out at any moment. But, yeah, Juan is more established. So I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, I'd say we're a little off here because, I do think Juan Adams will probably win, and I think he's going to open some eyes to this one. It's certainly a do-or-die fight for him. Like, he's got to win. If he doesn't beat Justin Taffa, he's out of the UFC. But this should probably be lined where it opened, in my opinion. At least on 5 dimes, it opened as a minus 185 for Juan Adams. I think that's about right, but obviously there's been a lot of action on him as of late. So, Craig, what do you think? Is this line right, or are we way off here?
I'm fine with it. I mean, Juan Adams is fighting at home in Houston. He's a wrestler taking on a pure striker. And nothing gets me more excited than a 5-2 heavyweight against a 3-1 heavyweight on a pay-per-view main card. Nothing makes me want to hand over my 64 hard-earned Canadian dollars than something like this. Way to go, UFC. 2 great pay-per-views in a row.
Kyle, what do you think?
Oh, he's just.
I love Craig.
It's wild. It's wild. Yeah, I mean, it's 2 mid-level heavyweights, so it's probably spread a little too far there. I think you got two mid-level heavyweights fighting each other. There's a 60-40 chance that the underdog lands something on the other mid-level guy. You know what I mean? So I would always anytime I see heavyweight fights like that, I like them on DraftKings, because you kind of just have to pick your poison. Just take somebody. A lot of times just kind of go with the underdog. Why not? Like, that's your puncher's chance there. It doesn't get much better than that, especially for the low level to mid-level heavyweights. So yeah, it's probably spread a little too far for that.
All right, the last one I thought was kind of interesting, because a lot of the other fights are lined pretty close. I'm sure the new Alex Barato Callan Williams fight will be lined quite heftily. But women's flyweight action is going to kick off the ESPN prelims. We got Andrea Lee minus 340 over Lauren Murphy at plus 280. I think this is a pretty hefty line, especially with Andrea Lee coming off a loss. Murphy's coming off the best performance of her career. Greg, what do you think of this line? Is this line right or not right?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I agree with this line. I mean, Andrea Lee in her last fight against JoJo Calderwood was really a chance. If she won that fight, maybe she gets a title shot. And she wasn't terrible in the fight. She wasn't terrible. And yeah, Lauren Murphy had a great performance, but I don't see her getting the win here. I see Andrea Lee just sticking with the game plan, pushing forward, and getting a win. And I'm fine with the line. I mean, what did it open at? Minus 305, and it's swayed in Lee's favor. I can get behind that.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. Listen, Lauren Murphy, friend of the podcast. She's fantastic, but a perennial underachiever, and I think this is where that's going to continue. It's not. I'm glad she had a good fight, recently, but I don't think that's gonna spill into this. So KGB should go in there and do her thing.
Yeah, I would make it a bit closer, actually. I think that Lauren, I wouldn't put her as the favorite or anything, but I think that she has kind of a style that could present problems for Lee. I mean, we look at in the past, Lee lost to Sarah D'Alelio and Roxanne Modafferi. These were earlier on in her career where she, was less experienced. But I mean, kind of grind it out kind of fighters, get in your face, put the pressure on you. I think if Lauren can do that, she has a very good chance, of getting the upset here. Just, if she can get Andrea Lee down, but I know we've seen Andrea be able to, pull off submissions and all that. And then on the feet, I think that she's got the pretty clear edge. But I think that, coming off such a good win, looking to really put herself back up into the mix here, I think that, it should be a little bit closer. If anybody out of the matchups that she has had recently so far in the UFC, I think this could be one that's kind of like a surprise, where if it's going to be, a one-sided against Lee, this could be one of them.
Yeah, I think this is lined kind of crazy. Like I think Lee should be the favorite. Maybe like a minus 230 or something. But I think minus 340 is a little redonk. It's just a little redonk. I just think it is. There's a new Lauren Murphy right now. Like she's confident. She feels like she's appreciated right now. She's not pissed off at the world like she once was. And I know Kyle has interviewed a pissed off Lauren Murphy a time or two, but if you interviewed her today, you're not going to get that same girl. You're just not. Like, you might get an F word or an S word coming out of her, but she's not going to F the world or make fun of Jessica I and call her names that we can't say on this podcast. Like, she's just in a different place right now, and that's why I think the fight's a little more interesting. I do favor Lee here, but Lauren's not one to sleep on, and if I actually gambled at this line, I would throw a couple shekels on Lauren Murphy, but I am not going to gamble. I'm not that kind of a guy. But let's move ahead to the soon-to-be award-winning buy or sell segment. We got some questions via the email over the last week or so, so let's get into it. Craig, we're going to start with you here. Buy or sell that we will see a Bellator pay-per-view of some kind in 2020?
Is this because of Steven Espinoza? Did Steven send you this question? Come on, Steven. You dog, you. No, we're not going to see one. No, you've got DAZN and Paramount Network, and you're married there. You're not going to have a pay-per-view.
Kyle?
I would say no, just because if they were going to, it would have been this last card. They would have held off a little bit and made that a pay-per-view. I mean, what else are they going to put? Because if you're going to have a Bellator pay-per-view, you got to have Cyborg. And who in the hell is Cyborg going to fight now? I mean, that was by far the most interesting fight in Bellator. So, I just the pay-per-view would have to be built around her. So, yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, I can't see it either, just because of, how many they have their hand in all these cookie jars now, and so it's just like, okay, I don't know how they would separate all that business up. Seems a little bit too complicated at the moment, especially in these early stages of this, Showtime, CBS stuff. So yeah, at the moment, that's a little hard to imagine.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a pay-per-view. I do think we'll see an event on Showtime at some point this year, but I don't think it's going to be a pay-per-view. Oh, this is a good one. Kyle, we're going to start with you on this one. Buy or sell that Joe Martinez is the best ring announcer in MMA?
Come on now. I love Joe Martinez. Why are you gonna make me do this? Of course, sell. Of course, sell. Bruce Buffer is a god. So I love Joe Martinez, though. He's awesome.
All right, Drake, present the same question to you, but right now in 2020, right this moment, if Buffer and Martinez had a ring announcer, decathlon, would Martinez win?
I mean, probably because he's younger. So, yeah, okay, give him the edge there. But no, man, I like Bruce. I mean, it's kind of not fair because he's the guy. He's the voice. We've heard him for so much longer. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, Joe, he's good. He's very good. But Bruce is like the OG. I can't go against it.
This is tough because, man, I think Joe is better right now. Consistently,
he sent you this question.
No. I think he's better. I don't think he should be doing Conor McGregor fights or pay-per-views or ESPN cards. But if they move Martinez to every ESPN Plus card, I would not have any issue with that whatsoever. Give Buffer the Rogan role where he does the pay-per-views and he does the big ESPN cards, but let Martinez give him some more reps because I do think he's that good. So I'm abstaining from this one, Craig.
My guess is that's what they're going to do. They're going to phase Buffer out and
yeah, I still want Buffer in there doing the big ones. Even if you phase him out, do what his brother did in WCW. Just bring Buffer in for the main events and here's Hulk Hogan, and then that's it. Craig, what do you think?
He does that right now. Michael does that with boxing. They only bring him in for the main event and some of the bigger fights. Yeah. And I'm sure he'll be at which one is it? Is it Logan or is it the other one, Jake? Is it Jake? It's Jake Paul.
For God's sake.
They'll bring him in for that. In terms of MMA in-ring announcers, Lillian Garcia, you got Joe Martinez. You've got the occasional Budday Johnson over in the UK, and he does some of the Bellator shows. I like Joe Martinez. I love how he adds some flair. He also does big boxing cards as well. But they don't have Joe Martinez in the Poker Stars commercials. Joe Martinez can't charge $600 for voiceover to start a podcast, which I did not pay, but still. Bruce Buffer is the name. Bruce Buffer has a huge brand. Joe Martinez, everybody knows him, but he's not Bruce Buffer.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, of course.
I think I actually might like the KSW guy the most. I don't know his name, but I think he has a really good voice, and it just fits for intense. KSW shows. Yeah, it really brings that intense vibe out. Ooh, you get chills just hearing him echoing out through those big Polish arenas.
That's a great point.
Vladimir Pasta.
Nicely done.
Born and Road.
Oh, and Lenny Hart, of course.
Oh, God.
The real GOAT.
This one is from Sean. Drake, we're going to kick this one off with you. I knew we were going to get some question like this. Buy or sell that a current active member of the UFC roster will make his or her debut in the WWE in 2020?
In 2020, buy. I'm going to buy it, and this is going to lead off of my bold predictions article I did a couple weeks ago for my news. That was my first article I did. Go check it out. But I think, a shameless plug, Colby Covington, I think that he is going to leave the UFC this year, and that doesn't mean he's going to go directly to the WWE, but hey, he wants to, so that's a good possibility. We got plenty of time left in this year. I think he's going to leave at some point, and either Bellator or WWE, maybe both. So yeah, I'll buy that one. And just to be very specific, I'll go with Colby Covington being that guy.
I'm going to sell this one, but if you ask me at the same time next year, I would buy it because I do see Daniel Cormier having a role there at some point. I don't know if he's like wrestling per se, but I could definitely see him on, backstage or at the booth or doing something with WWE. I just don't know if it's going to be this year. It all depends on what happens with his fight with Stipe and when that happens, if that happens. But I think if it does happen, I think we will see DC doing something for them. I don't think sort of in a character role, but doing something with the broadcast team. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, you know what? It all depends on what that role could be. Is it Colby Covington? He's a part of the roster. He's appearing on not just the big pay-per-views that they have, but some of the smaller house shows. Or is it just like where Tyson Fury comes out of the crowd and then all of a sudden he's feuding with Braun Strowman? And I don't watch wrestling, but I get the gist. Could I see something like that happening with a Colby Covington or a bigger name? Sure. But like a full-time role, I'd sell on that one.
Let's put it this way. Colby, if it's Colby or whoever else, they have an actual match this year.
If not, or in a featured role. Yeah.
That changes it up a bit.
Yeah, like what's Cain Velasquez's status right now? Isn't he hurt again?
Well, I mean, we're not counting him because he's already there.
So Brock Lesnar. I mean, once upon a time, there was a real chance that maybe he would fight. What was his nickname? Hoppa, Hoppa, Travis Brown. Well, why not make that happen?
Kyle.
I don't even know what the question even is at this point. I'm going to go sell just because I think it's too soon. I think there's some irons in the fire, but they're not quite there yet. I think both of what you guys said was exactly who it would be, Covington or Cormier, but I think we're not quite there. Again, basically Mike's answer. If you ask this question next year, I think probably. But I think for right now, I think it's just a little too soon to make it happen. And is Cain now? Is Cain's already not? He's already gone.
Yeah.
Is Lesnar officially gone, or is he still like on the roster getting tested? Do we know?
No,
I don't think he's.
I don't think so.
Is he gone?
Yeah.
Gone? Okay. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if they were still like CM Punk stayed on the roster forever, and he was on it beforehand. He was on the roster for like years.
He's still getting tested.
Listen, if he's still on it, right? That's something that could happen, or even like a Mickey Gall or a Mike Jackson, somebody who built their name out of that thing, could very well go over.
So funny.
But yeah, I would say sell. A little too soon.
As for Covington, though, let's not forget that he has already wrestled before for other little promotions, so he has gotten in the ring.
Yeah, he did some stuff with TNA as well. And Dan Lambert loves the wrestling stuff, so I'm sure Dan would be all over that opportunity as well. I think he's doing something with MLW right now, if memory serves me correctly. But this is an interesting one from Jay Parker. Buy or sell, Craig, that the flyweight title fight between Joseph Benavidez and Davison Figueiredo will be the only flyweight title fight of the year.
No, because the winner's going to take on Brandon Moreno, and Brandon Moreno's going to win that. I mean, listen, once I find that hill, I will die on that hill. And Brandon Moreno is going to be champ by the end of 2020. So, Jay, I love the question, but I'm going to stick to my guns here.
Kyle.
Phrase the question one more time.
The flyweight title fight between Benavidez and Figueiredo will be the only flyweight title fight of the year.
Sell. Yeah, no, sell.
Drake?
I think they're going to bring the division back, man. I think it's coming back. I think it's slow and steady, but I think it's coming back.
Drake?
No, I'm selling on that too, and especially if Benavidez wins. This ties back into my article again because this was one of my other bold predictions. Benavidez, I think he's going to win, and then he's going to go on to defend it 2 more times after that. So that's 3 title fights total 2020. He's going to really want to be active. he's gonna, they're gonna give him anybody he wants. He's gonna be the fighting champion of flyweight. So I'm gonna sell that.
Yeah, I'll sell it as well. But man, I'm not 100% sold on that. I love the flyweight division. I hope it never goes anywhere. But Dana White seems to have this issue with 125. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why anybody has a negative thing to say about that division because it's so friggin' good. Yeah, I think we'll see more than one title fight. But I like this one because it could go either way. It's a 50-50 shot in my opinion. Kyle, we're going to start with you here. Buy or sell... Let me pull this up correctly. Buy or sell that Aljamain Sterling, Piotr Jan, Marlon Moraes, and or Corey Sandhagen, none of these four guys will fight for the title in 2020.
Oh, geez. I think he just listed too many names. If it was like, give me two names and maybe I'd buy it, but I guess I'll have to sell. It's so many names. So I guess I'll sell, and then I think most likely is Peter Yan. I think that's probably most likely to fight for the belt.
Drake, what do you think?
So Sandhagen, Moraes, and Yan, is that the only three, or is there another one?
And
I missed?
Sterling.
Sterling. Yeah. Whoa. Boy. Okay, well, let's think here. Okay, so because if the Aldo fight is happening in that's projected for March, April, May. Okay, and then let's say the winner of that goes on to fight. The only other person that could have a possible chance at getting that fight would be like Dominic Cruz, right? Out of these people that are listed, that are not listed. So, man. And let's say Dominic wins a fight in that meantime, which is very likely to happen. He's going to come back between in the next 6 months, crossing my fingers. So you know what? Yeah, I'm going to buy that. I think that's how it's going to play out because they don't care at all anymore. Then the logic is gone in 2020. Dominic Cruz and Aldo are going to fight for the bantamweight title over these contenders. So yeah, I'm buying it. I'm going to buy it.
I completely agree with everything Drake just said there. And the only way this doesn't happen is if Jose Aldo somehow beats Henry Cejudo. And even then, we could see a rematch. Like, that's just the way this crazy world is right now. So I'm buying it. And I think we do see Cruz. But I think all four of those guys are going to be in a position where they deserve to fight for the belt. You could probably make the argument that all four of those guys deserve to fight for the belt right now. But man, it's just going to be an interesting division, especially with Henry Cejudo being the champion. It could be maybe some interim stuff, and that would change things a little bit. But, Craig?
Yeah, so worst case scenario, Jose Aldo and Henry Cejudo go in there and beat the wheels off each other and can't fight for the rest of the year. So then what do? What does the UFC like to do? They pull out this little card, and they decide, hey, now we're not on video, but let's be the cool guys, and let's throw out an interim belt. Let's just do an interim belt. So you've got four guys to choose from there, and then Dominic Cruz slides his way in. One of those four has to fight for it. So yeah, I'll sell it.
Drake, over to you. We'll do a few more here. Buy or sell that Zuffa Boxing holds one event in 2020.
I'll buy it. I think it'll probably be maybe just one towards the end of the year. Sounds like, we can never trust Dana, but from what he's talking about in regards to, that whole situation seems like a very complicated kind of long thing. And then you got to think he's also still, working on UFC stuff. So, yeah, I'll think that there'll be one, but probably just one at the most because, he's just got so much else going on.
Yeah, if I have to answer with maybe just one, then I'm selling the shit out of it. I just don't see it happening right now. I just don't see it. I think Dana's got too much going on. I think there's going to be some other issues that he's going to have to deal with as well. I just think that getting into boxing right now is just not a good time unless he can work something out with Floyd and Floyd runs Zuffa Boxing for him, which I know Dana probably wouldn't do because I know Dana wants to get into boxing so bad. I just don't know if he could do it. Craig?
You know what? I want it to happen. I mean, you've got the Shields, Nunes, you've got Mayweather, Pacquiao, McGregor. There's so many storylines, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I know they've talked about it recently in January, and I said a couple of weeks ago that I'd like to see it happen. I really pushed for it. But yeah, I don't see it happening. I really don't. Maybe it's 2021. But then again, I mean, Pacquiao and Mayweather, they're not getting any younger. But at the same time, if an MMA fighter fights that good of a boxer, they're going to lose. So it doesn't matter. They could be in a wheelchair and they could still beat an MMA fighter in a boxing fight.
Kyle?
I'm gonna sell, and I'm gonna put on my Eddie Bravo hat real quick. Zuffa boxing isn't real. It's not an actual thing. It doesn't exist. It's never existed, and it's not going to exist.
Look into it.
I want to give props to Mike Dice, who is my former editor over at Fansided, because when this whole Mayweather McGregor thing was happening and Dana rocked the Zuffa boxing shirt, Dice sends me over zuffaboxing.com, and I click it, and it went to his Twitter page, which I thought was brilliant. I don't know how the hell he pulled that off, but he pulled it off, and that was unbelievable. I don't know if he has a domain or not anymore, but here we are. Craig, ooh, this is a fun one. Buy or sell a former UFC champion will sign with the PFL in 2020.
Define champion.
A former champion, someone who held a UFC title at some point in their career.
Is the UFC title like winning the Ultimate Fighter?
No. An actual title.
What are you laughing? Okay, Nico Montano won the Ultimate Fighter. She got a belt. Carlos Esparza did.
Okay.
Jeez.
Nico was a champion.
Only two people have done that.
I don't care. Drake, 2 counts. Those
Yes.
2 fighters are just lovely. Now, yeah, I'll buy that. Why not? I mean, listen, we're talking Diego Sanchez. We're talking, there's all sorts of fighters. I mean, start carting out some of the best of the best. Maybe Court McGee goes to PFL. Like, I don't know.
He's not a champion, though. He wasn't a former champion.
I don't care. I don't even care at this point. Champ, no champ. In all honesty, like former UFC champions going to PFL, if Rory McDonald's going to do it, then yeah, I could, and he wasn't a champ, but yeah, I could realistically see somebody. Off the top of my head, I'm going to have to think about it, so come back to me, but yeah, I'm sure there's probably somebody.
Kyle?
Yeah, same. Like off the top of my head, it's kind of hard to come up with a name, but I imagine somebody. It seems like PFL is sticking around, right? I mean, I think it would have died by now if it was going to. It would have made it 1 season or 1 year or whatever, and I think it would have flopped. And it's not. It seems to be doing okay, and the funding is still there. I don't know how. I don't know who's watching it and that type of access to be able to earn that amount of money, but it's happening. We're seeing it. So yeah, I think if they can continue to offer that kind of money to people, then yeah, sure.
So I would buy this if it didn't seem like the PFL was more interested in having, fighters who are coming up and, more in their prime, as opposed to people who are on the back end, like let's say BJ Penn, who's a guy who nobody mentioned, which I'm a little surprised about. So that's one who's out there. But I don't think the PFL is interested in those kind of guys, honestly. So in that situation, I'm going to sell that just because it doesn't seem like what they're going for. They're really trying to actually start something and not, pick from the remains of everybody else. So props to them for that. And yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it'll happen.
I'm going to buy this. Henan Barrow.
Ooh,
That was one of my 4 names I came up with.
Henan Barrow. That's the only one that would make sense. You have more names, Craig?
Yep. I have 4 in total. Henan Barrow being number 1. Drake, yeah. I'm not going to pick apart your argument. The only thing I'll say is the fact that you had Ali Isaev and Jared Rosholt as your heavyweight finals. They're looking at the bottom of the barrel in some of their divisions.
well, hey.
The 4 that I have:
Tim
Barrow, Andrei Arlovsky, Chris Weidman, and a long shot, but a guy that loves owning steakhouses and gyms, and sometimes they work out. A big rig, Johnny Hendricks.
Hendricks. That's an interesting one. All right, we're going to sneak in 2 more quickly. Kyle, buy or sell that Shane Burgos re-signs with the UFC?
Buy. I think Shane Burgos is around for the long haul. He's a legitimate prospect. I don't know. He's a little bit beyond the prospect stage, but you know what I mean. He's a legitimate prospect that has a big future. A guy like that is very, very smart and knows that if he wants to cement the legacy that I think he wants to, you got to do that in the UFC. You're not going to do it elsewhere. And I don't think he's going to get a bunch of money from somewhere else unless he were to enter like a PFL type competition. That would be the only thing that maybe would entice him out. But there'd be no reason to go over to like a Bellator or a One. No one's going to give you any more money than the UFC at that point. And again, as far as cementing your legacy, it's got to be in the UFC.
Drake?
Yeah, I think Kyle pretty much summed it up perfectly. And, with the news of him signing with Front Row, right? That's what they're called, their first round of management, or, with Kawa. And, I think he's going to be able to get him, work something out that's good enough to where it's not like just a little bit above what he was before. So I think that, he can definitely get something that's in his favor and stick around with the UFC at the same time. And, Kyle summed it up really well.
Yeah, I'll buy it just to sort of add on to it, but I bet he gets teased a little bit. I bet he gets wine and dine. I bet he's got some damn good offers that have already come in and continue to come in. I think PFL's really interesting, considering who they'll have there. And, if they can give him some good per fight money, how could you not, take that opportunity? Mm-hmm. Like, if you're him, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of active fighters on the UFC roster that are like, shit, like, this is there? Like, I could actually fight some of these people. No, I'm not trying to be a dick, but I mean, here we are. People. I mean, these people. Craig named a couple of the names there. Craig,
somebody's got to take out Lance Palmer.
That's right. What I was gonna say. Yeah, if I'm Shane Burgos, do I really want to repeat Alex Gilpin's 2019? Probably not. I'm gonna want to stick around in the UFC. And listen, I'm gonna liken his situation to being like Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is pretty good. Ryan Tannehill is actually quite good. He had a good 2019. So did Shane Burgos. And then he got to a stage where he fought or played against the sexiest man in the world in Makwan Amirkhani. And for Ryan Tannehill, that was Tom Brady. And he beat the snot out of him. So, yeah, if I'm the UFC, I re-sign Shane Burgos. If I'm the Titans, I re-sign Ryan Tannehill. Check, mate. And that's why I work special teams, Mike.
That was the most roundabout analogy, certainly ever on this particular show.
If you listen
in
to
the short light, yeah.
Moving ahead to this final one, and Craig sort of touched on this a little bit. Courtney sent this one in. Drake, buy or sell? We will see 2 or more interim title fights in the UFC this year.
Yeah, buy. I mean, interims. They love interims, and they want belts on everybody. They made a BMF belt. It's not an interim belt, but it's a belt. So they want belts. Interim belts, 2, maybe make it 6. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe 12. We'll see. Just could multiply them by 2s. I'm going to go, yes, definitely buy.
Craig.
And sometimes you lose 2 fights in a row and you get a chance at a belt. So, yeah,
exactly.
Go on a 2-fight losing streak. You might get a contract, make it a belt. I'll sell. The only one that I see is 1, and whether it's flyweight, whether it's bantamweight, wherever it is, I just see the 1. The only caveat to that is you could make an argument for welterweight. You never know when Kamaru Usman's going to fight, but yeah, I'm just going to stick it with 1.
I'm with you, Craig. I think we'll see 1, just because I think with the current crop of champions that we have, I think we'll see 1, maybe heavyweight, depending on what Stipe does. Cejudo's a wild card, but I think he'll fight this year. I think he'll do what he needs to do. He'll fight in May, and then, we go from there. Kyle, you have the final word.
You guys keep forgetting about Holly Holm, and I don't know why. How many times we have to have this conversation? Holly Holm is clearly going to fight for something. She's got to fight for a belt. They can't give her a real belt, right? So we got to make an interim belt. So that's just 1 right there. Boom. Add that to whatever Craig's 1 is, and then you nailed it. I will buy. Correct. It was buying is that there'll be 2 or more.
Correct.
So I will buy. 2018 was the year of interim. They kind of took 2019 off, and I think they'll pick right back up this year. I think it'll be on like a cycle. They'll hammer us with interims, and then they'll take a year off, and then we'll get hammered with interims again.
So
we had 2 interims on 1 card in 2019. People, come on.
Yeah, but that was pretty much it, though. I mean, like in 2018, it was just constant. I'd like to see the numbers. I'm just going off of memory, but it felt like 2018. It was just like every other fight was like an interim belt, and then in 2019, it felt like okay, it wasn't crazy. I
think that was it, right? Those are the only 2.
I kind of think so.
But hey, anything can happen.
Yeah. There it is, interim, non-interim, undisputed. Here we are. That's going to do it for this week's Off the Cuff. Submit your questions. Some good ones. I still have like 10 or 12 more that I didn't even get to. Via email, sflcpodcast@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Twitter at MikeHeck_JR and use the hashtag Off the Cuff. Yeah, we'll try the hashtag thing. I've never done that before. Craig, anything else you want to let the folks know about before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I just finished my predictions for UFC 247. Seems like another fight just got added, so looks like I'm back at making predictions again for a fight that there aren't even odds or any info on.
Matt Allen is the fastest talker ever, by the way. I gotta say,
yeah,
he is
everybody knows that. And the other thing, too, he just loves to look at the comments and then just start talking about the comments or forget everything he's talking about. So I had to scold him. He's the weakest link on this podcast network because he doesn't exist here anymore. He's also the weakest link on mine.
John Franklin with the line of between the links last week, and I'm not even talking about the Cleveland Browns comment. Kyle, anything else you want to let the folks know about?
Listen, tune in. I absolutely adore this network. I think we're the best podcast network in MMA. We're certainly one of the only ones doing what we do with all these shows. So please subscribe to the network wherever you can and tune in. There's a lot of fantastic shows. If you don't recognize the name of a show, it's guaranteed a serial show. So you should at least check out one episode to see if you like it, and it'll be out every week.
Drake Riggs, I mean, this could take 2.5 minutes, but I don't care. Go ahead.
Well, I'll keep it short for you guys. So at the beginning, we touched on it a little bit. Mike did, UFC versus Bellator, kind of a hot topic right now. Working on a big, full, complete history of UFC versus Bellator head-to-head events on the same day. Working on that to come out this week, maybe tomorrow. Really, interesting to see all that stuff side by side. So catch that on my MMA news when it drops. And then follow me on Twitter. I changed my handle to @DrakeRiggs_ now, so that's new. And then, of course, listen to all the great shows on Loudmouth Network. Yeah.
Attaboy. And, I'm just going to plug one thing. Just the YouTube channel, youtube.com/MikeHeckMMA. Had a couple great chats. Talked with Alex Perez, who had a phenomenal win on Saturday. Talked to Montel Jackson. And I don't know if you guys have listened or have ever heard Montel Jackson do an interview. This guy doesn't say very much. He's just not that kind of a guy, but he opened up quite a bit in this one. We talked about the win. We talked about a whole bunch of everything. We talked about the walkout, which was unbelievable. But what really got him going was Kobe Bryant and the way the media handled that whole situation. Montel was all sorts of fired up at TMZ and the way that was all handled with the misinformation that was being thrown out there. Montel doesn't like doing interviews just for that fact, because he feels like the media will spin things around and they'll put things in the wrong direction, the wrong annotation and things like that. It's just, it irks him, and that's why he's hesitant to do interviews. And I think that's something that all of us in the media can do a better job with. It's not about being first, it's about being right. And Montel really opens up about that. So I got some really cool stuff coming up tomorrow. I'm just going to throw this out there. Normally when you throw these things out in existence, they don't happen, but I'm going to talk to Sean O'Malley for the first time tomorrow. I've never got a chance to talk to him, so that's going to be happening as well. So thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the network wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and of course the Loudmouth MMA YouTube channel. For Craig, Kyle, and Drake, I am Mike Heck. No need to be scripted. It's more fun going off the cuff. We'll see you next time.